In the dusty light of a late afternoon, Darius Gentry stood before a weathered courthouse, his heart pounding as he raised his hand to bid. The auctioneer's voice rang out, announcing a cabin on 12 acres of prime land, complete with a well and a corral fit for 20 cattle, for a mere 25 cents. Grown men with wallets full of cash stood silent, their eyes fixed not on the prize but on Darius, their expressions heavy with something unsettling. Pity. No one else bid. The gavel hovered, the auctioneer's call of going once, lacking its usual fire. The silence stretched, thick and ominous. As the gavel fell with a crack that echoed like a warning shot, an old woman, Willa Blaine, edged closer, her hands clutching her shawl. "You don't want that place, son," she whispered, her voice urgent. Before Darius could press her, the crowd scattered, their hushed murmurs trailing behind. "Nobody's been inside for 15 years. What happened to the last man who tried?" The ride to the cabin felt heavier with each step his horse took, the weight of those watching eyes lingering in his mind. The property sat at the end of a neglected dirt path, overgrown with tall grass. The cabin was modest, its logs sturdy but its windows dark with grime, giving it an abandoned air. Yet the door's handle turned smoothly, almost too smoothly, as if someone had kept it oiled despite the years of disuse. Inside, dust swirled in the faint light filtering through cracked shutters. The air was stale but not decayed, strange for a place supposedly empty for over a decade. A simple table with 2 chairs stood against one wall, a cold fireplace opposite. Above the mantel, a clean patch of wood hinted at a missing painting or mirror. But it was the floor that stopped Darius cold, a perfect square of planks, deliberately cut and sealed with a dark, hardened substance, as if hiding something meant to stay buried forever. As he knelt to inspect the seams, a shadow flickered across the window. A rider, half hidden in the tree line, watched him. Their eyes locked through the grimy glass, and Darius recognized the wide-brimmed hat with a silver band, one of the men from the auction. The rider spurred his horse and vanished, but not before Darius realized someone had been guarding this place, perhaps for years. At the general store in town, Darius sought tools to pry open the sealed floor. The moment he mentioned the cabin, the room froze. The storekeeper's hands shook as he handed over a hammer and pry bar, and a woman dropped her sewing basket, thread spilling across the floor. An elderly man shook his head, muttering about tragedy. Then the back door swung open, and in stepped Fletcher Knox, the man from the tree line, his silver-banded hat gleaming. "I'll give you $500 for that cabin," he said, his smile cold. The offer was staggering. 2,000 times Darius's bid. The storekeeper dropped a jar, the crash punctuating the tension. "Why pay so much for something nobody wanted?" Darius asked, suspicion rising. Fletcher's hand twitched toward his holster. "Sentimental reasons," he said, but his eyes betrayed desperation. The townsfolk's silent stares screamed one thing: take the money and run. Before Darius could respond, hoofbeats thundered outside. 3 men dismounted: Deputy Morrison, a well-dressed man named Tobias Crow, and a third with his hand on his gun. Tobias locked eyes with Fletcher. "I thought we had an agreement about this situation." Fletcher shrugged. "He refused my offer." Tobias's laugh was hollow. "You offered enough to make him curious. That's the problem." Darius cut in. "What's under the floor?" The room went still. Tobias stepped closer. "Papers. Old papers. Some people want buried." The deputy added, "Papers that could hang a man, or make him rich enough to vanish." Willa's voice broke the silence from the doorway. Samuel Hartwell was murdered 3 days after sealing that floor. He had proof of a land fraud scheme, names, dates, forged deeds that could ruin half the wealthy families in 3 counties. The truth hit like a bullet. The cabin wasn't abandoned. It was a vault for evidence of a massive fraud. Suddenly, a new voice cut through the air. "None of you will see tomorrow." Judge William Crane stood at the window, rifle aimed. Willa whispered his name, and Darius's stomach sank. A judge, orchestrating the fraud, forging signatures to legitimize fake deeds. Chaos erupted as Morrison tackled Crane, the rifle firing into the ceiling. Darius drew his pistol. "Stop!" We're going to the cabin, together. We open that floor and see what Samuel died for. Crane's eyes narrowed, but Willa added, "Letters," Samuel told me. They prove Crane was following the governor's orders. Hoofbeats outside signaled the governor's hired guns. The group fled through the back door, racing down an old mining trail as bullets shattered the store's windows. The trail was treacherous, but they reached the cabin at dawn. 6 of them, Darius, Judge Crane, Fletcher, Morrison, Tobias, and Willa, stumbled into the alley where their horses waited. They rode hard through the darkness, the sound of pursuit growing closer with each passing minute. The old mining trail was barely visible in the moonlight, winding treacherously between rocky outcroppings and loose shale that threatened to send them tumbling into the canyon below. Judge Crane's horse stumbled, nearly throwing him, but he managed to stay in the saddle. "How much farther?" he called out. "Another half-mile," Willa answered. "Trail comes out near the back of your property, Darius." The irony wasn't lost on him. They were risking their lives to reach the very place that had started all this trouble. They reached the cabin as the first gray light of dawn touched the horizon. Darius kicked open the door and immediately went to the sealed section of floor, pulling out the pry bar he'd bought. 15 years, Fletcher muttered, watching as Darius worked to break the seal. The dark substance cracked and split under pressure. One by one, the planks came loose, revealing a cavity underneath. Inside was a metal strongbox and a leather satchel. Darius lifted them out, his hand shaking as he realized he was holding the evidence that had cost Samuel Hartwell his life. The strongbox was heavy with coins, more money than Darius had ever seen. But it was the satchel that made Judge Crane's face go white. Inside were dozens of letters bearing the territorial governor's seal, payment records, and fraudulent deeds showing the scope of the conspiracy. "Dear God," Tobias whispered, reading over Darius's shoulder. "He sold the same parcels 15, 20 times each." Morrison found a letter dated 2 weeks before Samuel's death, ordering Crane to eliminate the problem. The governor's men surrounded the cabin, shouting, "Throw out your weapons and come out with your hands raised." Darius stepped onto the cabin's front porch, holding the leather satchel high. The 8 mounted men had rifles trained on him, but they weren't lawmen, just hired guns. "Before you pull those triggers," Darius called, "you might want to know what's in this bag. Your names are in here. Payment records showing how much Governor Webb paid you to keep quiet. He's planning to eliminate you as loose ends." Judge Crane appeared in the doorway. "It's true. Once you eliminate us, more men are coming for you." The leader, a scarred man, hesitated, then lowered his rifle and dismounted. "What do you need?" Several riders shifted uncomfortably, their confidence wavering. Darius continued, "Help us get this evidence to the territorial marshal. Webb goes to prison and you testify for immunity, or die by sunset." It took less than 30 seconds for them to choose. 3 days later, Darius stood in the territorial marshal's office, watching as Governor Marcus Webb was led away in shackles. The evidence was overwhelming. Forged deeds, $200,000 in stolen grants, and letters proving Webb ordered murders. Judge Crane's cooperation earned him a reduced sentence, while Fletcher, Morrison, and Tobias testified against other corrupt officials. Willa received enough money to live comfortably, and Darius kept the cabin, transforming it into a thriving ranch. The 12 acres that cost him 25 cents became a successful cattle operation. The cabin's dark secrets were replaced with honest records, its windows cleaned to let in the light. Darius had uncovered a conspiracy, brought justice to cheated families, and found the man he was meant to be. The 25-cent bid had been the best investment he'd ever made, not for the land, but for the legacy of truth. If you enjoyed this tale of bravery and betrayal, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more gripping stories from the Wild West.